This is Chris Kelly with a post on an article that one of my clients posted on yoga for back pain. Okay, and so I get asked by clients all the time over the years, what do I think of yoga? And I think it's awesome. I think it works very well. I think there's a lot of useful benefits to it when it's done well. Okay, and the article that my client posted is actually a pretty good one. Talks about how the importance of having hip mobility to alleviate back pain, and that's absolutely spot on. And so an example of that is if I don't have mobility when I'm leaning forward like this, if I don't have mobility hip flexion, for example, my hip flexors here are tight, I have to round my back instead because I can't move from my hips. So the body is smart, it's always going to get to where it needs to go. So we want to think about having mobility in our hips to get it there instead of in our back. But when we're talking specifically about yoga poses, there are really two criteria that are going to determine, whether or not they're actually effective and they inhibit or they reduce pain versus cause pain. Okay, one of those things would be midline stabilization. Okay, and oftentimes, one of the poses that is referenced in the articles, I believe it's called a warrior pose, and what it looks like is something like this, where I'm getting long and I'm kind of getting into this stretch and I'm arching my back here. You can kind of see this big arch, and yeah, I feel a stretch here, but I also kind of feel it along here. What's happening here when I'm getting this big arch along my back is that I'm running into the end range of extension of my spine, okay? And that's not necessarily the worst thing when it's done in isolation, like once or twice, but if I'm doing a pose like that over a long period of time, like let's say, repeatedly in a class, I'm kind of hitting into end range, that's going to sensitize what I call my pain receptors, or the nerves that send pain signals to my brain, and actually could potentially create pain. And so instead, what I want to think about doing with really any pose is just getting tight in my abs. All right, again, it doesn't require a large squeezing all the time. But what I tell people is, if I put one hand here on my chest and one hand here on my stomach, just getting tight and dropping these areas together a little bit helps to position my chest right above my hips, and that's what we want. This kind of aligns this abdominal canister so we get stretching from the right place. And so if I kind of look at the difference, I drop these two things down, I move forward, now I'm getting the stretch primarily from my hip, and it's not coming up into my back. So I'm isolating to the best ability, to the best degree possible, one area from another. Okay, and that really that holds true with any pose. Another pose that was referenced in the video was pigeon pose, in the article. And with pigeon pose, again, I'm coming into this position, and it's all good. I'm getting stretch here, but if I lean forward, I round on my back, again, I'm hitting in range, potentially, just inflection versus extension. So instead, I get tight here, and I think about just hinging forward, and again, controlling this, okay? Now, do I believe that we should just maintain a neutral spine all the time and never approach end ranges? No, I don't. I think that, that's important, and, poses like a cat-cow, I believe it is. Those are awesome, and those really, we need to be able to move into and out of flexion and extension with control, but to do so repeatedly in a class where I'm holding these poses for long periods of time might not be the best idea. All right, now, the second criteria that we want to look at with really any yoga pose is, do my joints have the ability to get into those positions? Okay, what I mean is, we all have a certain active range of motion that our muscles can control, whether it be reaching overhead or reaching behind my back or moving with my hips. Once I exceed that range, I start to use passive structures like ligaments, tendons, things that, again, bones that rub together and can create inflammation and pain. So I'm gonna give you two tests just to give you a quick idea of whether our upper body and our lower body kind of have the capacity to do what we need to do in these poses. If we're looking at upper body, like a classic example would be something like downward dog. So with downward dog, I'm coming overhead into upward dog, and then I'm coming into downward dog. Okay? Both useful poses. But again, with this test, what I want to think about doing, tightening everything up, just kind of do a windmill around my body here. I'm going to get to the top. I'm going to get as far as I can into flexion without my back arching. I'm going to turn my palm to face behind me. I'm going to come behind me. I'm going to try to keep this as close to my body as possible, and then I'm going to come back around. All right, and again, the goal with this, do it again, is keep this as close to my body as possible. That tells me that I have good control of both flexion and extension. Flexion moving this way, extension moving this way. Now, if I find that I feel a closing angle pinch, so for example, I'm doing this, and boom, I feel a pinch anywhere going up Going into flexion means that, I have a potential impingement there. Okay, so going overhead, and holding in that position might not be the best idea because I already have two bones that are rubbing together. And that might be a situation where you talk to your chiropractor, you can do joint mobility. There are a lot of videos on that online. I have a lot, but again, it's not the purpose of this video. I'm coming around like this and I feel a pinch, or I just can't keep my hand close to my body. Anything where I'm reaching behind the back excessively would be something that we want to stay away from. And again, the same rules apply there. Okay, we could get into how and why in future videos, but it's not our point here. Now, to look at our lower body, we're going to do what's called a hip car. Under the hip car, I'm just going to be in this position. I bring my knee to my chest here. This is hip flexion. I'm going to come out. I'm going to come around. And the way I cue this is I just say, pretend you're clearing a hurdle here on the way forward and back. Now, if I feel a pinch anywhere along this range of motion, so this is hip external rotation going into hip internal rotation. Anything that involves posing where I'm going into, like, let's say pigeon or external rotation, or I'm doing a lot of rotating with my hips, again, that's something to consider. If I feel a pinching, kind of anywhere in these areas. If I feel a pinching when I'm coming up here like this, anything that involves extreme kind of warrior type poses or poses like this or whatever, we want to take a look at. But again, my point is not to by any means degrade yoga. I think it's amazing. I just think you need to know what you need. You need to know what you're getting into before you do so. So, give your body a scan beforehand. Understand what your limitations are. Tell your teacher if they're not familiar with that. And it's going to go very well for you. So, thank you and enjoy.